You're giving me a broken back, a heart attack, I'll surely crack. You're digging me an early grave, I'm up to leave before I am back. But for a love like what you've got, you know that I'll do it. And for a love like what you've got, I'll keep on doing it. Do it, do it, do it, do it again. I'm coming home from work to you. The roads are cruel and I've the flu. I'm happy out to see you smiling, stood by piling bills. And everything that I've got, do what you want to it. All I've got's for you, do what you want to it. Do it, do it, do it, do it again. Will it all go bad? Will it make you sad? And will you get let down? No, not when I'm around. You hard thing. I'm struggling through fits and pains, and funny turns and Chinese burns. I'm digging when I'm sick as a fish, and I don't wish for much return. But for a love like what you've got, you know that I'll do it. And for a love like what you've got, I'll keep on doing
Salins is a canal and a transport village, mainly because the canal reached here about 1780, but was held up for a number of years after that with difficulties of how they were going to proceed. Salins at that time would have been a small area. The land previous to that would have been owned by the Flatsbury family, as were all of the lands in the area were owned and were given new names at the time, around about that time. The canal company was set up in there was talks of the canal in 1704, and in actual fact nothing happened for about 30 years. We're great here in Ireland at talking about things, but everywhere else it had happened and that work was proceeding on it. But then about 1750 it was decided to set up a company of the undertakers of the Grand Canal. There have been several companies it was a series of errors, levels, various wrong levels, wrong estimates. It was estimated that the canal first to go from Dublin to the Shannon Harbour would cost about £90,000 at that time, and there was a difference between Irish and English pounds. There was a differential at that time. But it eventually cost, to get to Salins, it cost £120,000. It cost a lot more than what it would have taken for the whole lot. But the canal company were very anxious, and for a number of reasons the canal was set up. Maybe the primary one probably would have been to supply water to Dublin, who was in very bad need of water. So the first water to supply the canal came from the Morel, which is around here, so that's the Morel River. And the canal was set up to provide water, but also to provide transport. If you think back to a time when there was no phones, no communications network, a horse and cart was the only means of bringing material from one part of Ireland to another, and that had to be in several stages. Now at the best of times, the most the horse could pull on the cart was 1 ton. But in the advent of a boat being developed, or transport on the waterways, one horse could pull 50 tons. So we can see the immense improvement that brought in the economics of the canal. If you take, for instance, in the main time of the transport, a ton of coal in Kilkenny would cost 10 shillings. By the time it got to Dublin, it was £3 by various transports. It all changed over the years. So the canal was a great invention, and it was underwritten by the Irish government at the time. You know, we all heard of Grattan's Parliament. Well, they were things went very well during that time. And one of the ideas of putting a spur on getting the canal developed in the 1750s was that we had a lot of money. And if that money wasn't used, it would be recalled to London. So in actual fact, they said, we'll kill two birds with one stone. We'll prevent the English from reclaiming the money, and we'll develop a canal system, a transport system, that will satisfy the needs of this country. They got as far as the first line was a direct straight line from Dublin, to the Liffey here at Sallins. In actual fact, we will be passing by in a short while where the canal took a sudden turn, just down past, about half a mile down here. The canal was to go to the Liffey, and the boats were to be locked down into the Liffey, sailed across, and then locked up on the other side. That was the original plan. As I say, there were several false starts, several wrong levels, several things that went wrong. They hadn't foreseen the many difficulties that would arise over the building of the canal. They built the canal, first they encountered Goylerstown, the rocks. They had to hew the rocks out, and the first canal company was involved in that, and they had the grandiose idea of flagging the bottom of the canal with flags, like it was done in ancient Rome. The canal was completely flagged in an oval shape, but they ran out of money, and that stopped that part of it. Then it went a further bit when it was let out in various stages, and the stages were advertised on the local paper. So Sanderson's newsletter and various different newspapers at the time, not various, but quite a few that were widely established. A paper was about a halfpenny at the time, which was one old halfpenny, and that was quite a lot for a lot of people, because most people only paid a penny a day. But the thing about it was that they reached Sallins after about 20 years, hard work and a lot of government acts. I think there's 20 government acts involving the building of the Grand Canal. The first one was in 1704, when it was decided that they would do all this. Then there was another one in 1740 and another in 1756, in which was to establish the undertakers of the Grand Canal. Now the undertakers of the Grand Canal made a great progress, and they got as far as Sallins. But in fact, they lost out then. In fact, the chief engineer resigned on Sallins Bridge about 1790, and he finished up with the company. Then there was another company set up called the Grand Canal Company, and that's the one that succeeded. But in the meantime, though, they had this idea that they were going to lock the boats down into the River Liffey here at Sallins, at a place called Burke Strand, and they were going to do the same when they got to the Barrow, which they did for the first 30 years. But anyway, there was a military engineer of great repute at the time, a man called General Valancy. And General Valancy decided that why not build an aqueduct? Now an aqueduct, the Leinster Aqueduct, which became for the Duke of Leinster.
Grand Canal, leaving Sallins on the way to Digby Bridge, and the 144 kilometres of the Grand Canal, I suppose it forms one of the longest nature reserves in Ireland, albeit a very narrow one. And it is a wonderful environment for a whole range of natural heritage, natural flora and fauna. And it's very often when water meets dry land, that's when you get the most variety of species, the greatest diversity, if it be a sea coast or an inland water, freshwater. And here we get water birds as well as land birds and tree birds, if you want to call them that. I suppose typical birds you'd see along the Grand Canal would be the grey heron, and he's very easily recognised, standing almost 1.5 meters tall, and he fishes for all kinds of aquatic animals, but also mammals. He's been known to take bank voles and rats and things like that. And you also might find mallard nesting along the reed beds. Not that many, because there is quite a bit of disturbance along canals nowadays with roads, greenways, and also you will find little grebe in the winter. More in the summertime they will go for open waters, lakes, but in the winter they will definitely come here and disperse as small family groups, diving little birds after aquatic insects and some vegetation. Two other birds you may find along the canal are coot and waterhen, or moorhen as the correct term for it. And the coot is a small black bird with a baldy head, and the ball is the coot. That's where the phrase comes from. And the moorhen is a little bit smaller and very similar in colour and habitat, but they try to keep out of each other's way. Now, along this stretch of the Grand Canal, there used to be regular sightings of moorhen, but the last few years they've become scarcer and scarcer. And there could be a number of reasons for that. One of them being the appearance of the American mink along this stretch of the canal, which has been sighted by several people and quite often. And it is, I suppose, an amphibious type of animal. He's just as happy in the water as on land, and is known to predate all kinds of flora and fauna around here. So an easy prey would be moorhen eggs in the nest, moorhen chicks for that matter. I have seen them myself slinking through the reeds at the side of the canal, and unless you are watching really, really carefully, you could miss him, because he makes the slightest little ripple, even on a calm day. So he hunts by stealth. And he is, I suppose, an escapee from a mink farm. And the mink, they were not all black as the ones we see today. They're practically jet black. They would have been different colours, but in the wild they've returned back to their darker colour. And in 1961, I believe, was when they first escaped into the Irish countryside. And they haven't gotten a good reputation since, I have to say, killing all in their path, as some people will say. And there may be some truth in that, because they are known to cache or store food for the rainy day. So they will kill more than they can eat there and then, unlike perhaps other native species. And so the mink is part of our landscape today. It's almost impossible, by most people's accounts, to eliminate it. And I think efforts would be futile and extremely costly. So I suppose it's one of those exotic invasive species that we will have to learn to live with, like many other exotic invasive species that we have today. And amongst them are plants, of course. There's 30-something invasive exotic plants. I suppose we're familiar with Japanese knotweed along the side of the road. Giant hogweed will be another one. And these plants, the giant hogweed, we have a hogweed, a native plant, but a giant hogweed can go to 2, 3, 4 meters high. It can be very dangerous, because if you happen to touch that with your skin and the sun shines on you, ultraviolet light, it can result in a very bad burn, which may not leave for a long time. It may not be very difficult to heal. Himalayan balsam is another one of those invasive exotic plants, and this is becoming more and more evident in Ireland today, especially along waterways and wet patches in Ireland. It is a beautiful plant, it's a delightful flower, but it is very strong and able to dominate over native species. When its seed pods are ready, the seed pods can actually explode and spread the seeds 7 meters, up to 7 meters. And of course, if that's near water, they can be carried further. And so it goes on. And today we have along long stretches, particularly of the Blackwater, and I saw it recently in Lismore, large stretches of the bank covered in Himalayan balsam. Now, it's a pretty plant. The danger is that it may attract pollinators away from our native plants, maybe, but in the winter when it dies back, it leaves the banks bare and open to erosion. So we're looking at problems down the road on that. As for the bird life here, well, you know, being a little connected corridor, 144 kilometers long, it does give a lot of these passerine birds, perching birds, songbirds, a great foothold in the countryside, whereas it's not going to get interrupted between here and wherever it ends, and so birds can move up and down. Also, butterflies can use this as a corridor, and this time of the year we're likely to see speckled wood, which we just saw back there at the Leinster Aqueduct. You will see a lot of small tortoise shells and red admirals around this time of the year. We're coming to the end of the butterfly season, of course, many other seasons as well. And some birds will actually use this canal as a conduit to move from A to B. I have noticed that collared doves fly up and down the Grand Canal here, foraging or going from A to B. A lot of the birds, we can hear birds in the background singing now, and that's the robin, but you will get all kinds of songbirds here. The blackbird, the thrush, the bullfinch, the greenfinch, very common here in the spring when they are more noticeable because of their song. And in the wintertime, you will have feeding off the berry forming bushes and trees, and particularly ivy. You will have the winter thrushes coming in from Scandinavia, the redwings and the fieldfares. So there's always something to see along here. Now, the cormorant, a very big black predatory bird eating fish, is common up and down the Liffey, but it can also be seen on the canal. It's not one I've seen commonly, I have to say, but it is present here. And of course, it's a fish-eating bird.